Arnold Shamblin served as an electrician's mate in the South Pacific during World War II. He was involved in the liberation of the Philippines. I'm going to ask you a few questions about your service in World War II, and if you have anything you'd like to add that wasn't in the questions, please feel free to do so.
Okay.
During World War II, what branch of service did you serve in?
Navy.
What was your rank?
Electrician's mate. When I left, electrician's mate 2nd class.
Where did you serve?
Mostly in the South Pacific.
Why did you pick the branch of service you joined?
Well, when I went to San Diego, they lined us up and they came and said, "You're in the Navy, you're in the Marines, you're in the Navy, you're in the Marines." I just happened to hit the Navy.
Were you pleased with your...
I think I was, yeah. I think I would rather be in the Navy. Not that I got anything against the Marines, but I was sort of glad to get to the Navy.
Where did you do your basic training?
San Diego, California.
What do you remember most about it?
Well, first thing they did, sent me to school, electrician school. And I was close to Mexico, so I got to go down to Mexico for a little while. And I think the school lasted about 6 weeks, and I came out. They gave me a 3rd class electrician's mate rating, and I was tickled with that, you know. And that's about all I remember about it.
What was your main job or assignment during the war?
Well, I was electrician on ships, and anything, you know, it had to do with electrical. I can I tell one story?
Sure.
I remember one time we had a ice cream freezer went down because the motor went bad in it. And so an electric motor fell to the electricians to take care of. We didn't have anything to rewind the electric motor with, so they sent me to an aircraft carrier that had the equipment to rewind the motor. And I didn't rewind the motor, but I got to watch them rewind the motor. And when I come back, I reckon they thought I rewound it. So they put me up to 2nd class electrician.
Did you see combat?
Not any actual combat. I was in combat zones or where airplanes were flying and submarines were around. That was our 2 main things that we worried about, was airplanes and submarines. Yeah.
Tell me about a couple of your most memorable experiences.
Well, first ship I was on was a cargo ship, and we left out of San Francisco with a load of bombs. And I remember after I got home, they asked me about, well, how'd you sleep with a bunch of bombs on the ship? And I said, well, I worried about it a little while, then I got to thinking. And I did. I've slept with my head laying on a bomb. Those bombs are that big around. And I've slept several times out on deck with my head laying on one of those bombs. And I told them, I said, well, if the bomb went off, I'd never know anything about it anyway. So it didn't worry me any at all.
Were you ever a prisoner of war?
No, I never was a prisoner.
were you awarded any medals or citations?
We had a lot of medals. The ones I remember is, the main one I remember was the Philippine Liberation Medal. After the Japanese took the Philippines, you know, we went back in and took them back. And I was in on that, and they gave me a medal for Philippine liberation.
Did you sustain any serious injuries?
No, not that I know of.
How often were you able to communicate with your family?
We got mail about once a month, and we could write a letter. I'm not sure how long it took them to get a letter back, but usually it was, you know, the letters I got were at least a month late, yeah.
How did you feel when you got letters from home?
We always, you know, when they called, mail called, everybody wanted to go and see if they got a letter. The ones I felt sorry for is the ones that didn't get letters. And I think I got letters most of the time. I've got a tale to tell about that. Or my wife said it'd be all right to go ahead and tell it. I don't know, you know what Dear John means. I got a Dear John letter while I was in service. Before I left, I used to go with a girl up in Coalfield, Tennessee. I don't know if you know where that is now. And I got engaged to her. And before I left, you know, I gave her a diamond ring and everything. And after I left, I guess we wrote each other for a couple of months. And she went to work at Oak Ridge, where they was building an atomic bomb. And I guess she met somebody there she liked pretty well. And anyway, not too long after that, I got what they call a Dear John letter. And she sent my ring back to me. They asked me what I did to my ring. I said I threw it in the ocean. And they said, well, you shouldn't have done that. But when I did it, well, I just didn't want the ring anymore, so I just pitched it over the ocean.
Did you communicate with your brother often?
Do I what?
Did you communicate with your brother Austin very often?
While I was in service, not too much. Well, not my brother Austin. My brother HD was in the Navy, and I seen him a lot more than I did Austin. Austin was in the Air Force, and I didn't communicate with him too much. Maybe we'd write each other a letter maybe once every 2 or 3 months, but that's about it.
What was the food like?
Well, most of the time it was good and bad. I can't tell you what we called it. They had some pretty good cooks in the Navy. That was pretty good. I guess pretty good job. My wife's got a grandson now that's learning to be a cook, and I wish he'd have gotten the Navy. Because I've ate some of his cooking, it's pretty good. But most of the time it's pretty good cooking.
Would you tell me about any particularly humorous or unusual events that happened to you?
Well, one I thought was humorous, but it turned out not to be too humorous. I guess, I don't know if you've heard or not, I don't know where I was talking about it or not, but anyway, wars is a terrible thing. And when you kill people, and they kill you, that's pretty bad. But what happens is that when they kill people, that's not the end of it. They sort of get souvenirs off of them and stuff like that, you know. And so they barter Navy and the Army and everybody, they barter with souvenirs. In other words, if I do get a souvenir, I'll take it, and somebody else has got a souvenir, I'll say, well, I'll swap you this souvenir for your souvenir. But anyway, somehow I ended up with a gold tooth that came out of a Japanese. And I knew how they got the tooth, but I didn't think nothing about it. And so I brought it home with me. And the first time I went to the dentist, I showed the dentist that tooth, and he didn't he didn't think too much of it. Yeah, so that sort of surprised me, But I understood, but I pulled it out and showed it to him, and he didn't think I ought to have a Japanese tooth with me. But that's that's part of war, I reckon. The Japanese kill Americans. They take their pocketbooks, their rings, and I reckon I never did kill anybody. Never did have to. I'm glad of that. But I've heard a lot, and I've seen a lot. And Americans, when they kill Japanese, I've heard that all of them had gold teeth, and that's what the Americans, a lot of them, did when they killed the Japanese. They got their teeth. I ain't saying it's right, but that's what they did.
What did you think of your officers and fellow soldiers?
I never had any trouble with. Of course, going through boot camp, they're pretty rough on you going through boot camp. But I think that's what they need to do, because they're having to train you for a lot what you have to go through with. But other than that, I don't think they even call them officers in boot camp. They call them drill sergeants. But I never had any problem with officers. I liked all officers. I had when you go off of a ship, and then when you go back on the ship, there's always an officer standing up to see you come on, and you have to salute him, and they salute you back. That's sort of something they've always done, I think.
Did you keep a personal journal or diary?
I kept I don't guess it was a diary. The people that I was with in the Navy, I tried to, ones I was closely associated with, I tried to get their addresses and their names. So I've got a book that's got a lot of names in it and addresses. I've called several of them since I got out, and some of them I got to talk to, and some of them had already passed away.
What do you recall about the day the war ended?
You talking about the Japanese War or the
Japanese?
See, the German War ended a little bit before the Japanese did. When the German War ended, I wasn't in on the German War, so I didn't know too much about it. But the ship I was on was a cargo ship, the first ship I was on, so we had to go to San Francisco, and they had a bunch of German prisoners there, and we picked them up and took them back to England, and I remember that when the German War ended. The Japanese War ended. I was in Washington, and it was it's probably the same all over the United States. It was pretty, everybody wanted to celebrate, the war ended. I hated the way it had to end, and they had to drop two bombs on Japanese to end the war, but everybody seemed to be pretty happy when it ended. And I was too. I was glad it was ended.
What do you remember most about the day you went home?
Well, I was trying to think. the day I went home. I think the most I remember and thought about was going to school and getting me a good education, you know. And the Navy, and I think the Army and all of them did that. They furnished you education if you go to school when you got out. I only went 1 year. I was already working for a aluminum company, and I went to UT for a year, and then I thought, well, I figured out how much I'd make if I got my degree, and the alcohol was almost already paying that much. So I said, I'll just go back, and I went back and stayed with alcohol for 40 years. And I got, they gave me some pretty good advancements at alcohol, so I was always glad that I went back instead of staying in school.
What did you go on to do as a career after the war?
What did I go into after the war?
Yes.
Aluminum Company of America. Yeah, I went to work for them, and for almost 40 years before I retired from them.
Did your military experience influence your thinking about the military or the war in general?
Yes, I guess, I guess it did. I know it. I know, we're in a war now. It's a different kind of war, so I don't think there's any comparison to the war we're in now to what it was back then, except, people still getting killed, but they're getting killed in different ways from what they did. Back then it was, it's shooting guns and stuff like that, and they drop a bomb to end the war. Now it seems like they're using bombs to kill people rather than end the war, So it's a lot of difference, but I think my experience in the military, made me think a lot about wars, and it made me think a lot about I wish we could do away with wars.
How did your service and experiences affect your life?
Well, several ways. I met a lot of good friends in the Navy. Met a lot of different religions. I was sort of always a Baptist, but I met a lot of Catholics and other religions, and I learned that they were good people, the same as I thought I was, and so it affected my life quite a bit. Mostly because of the people I met, I said.
Is there anything you'd like to add that we haven't talked about in this interview?
No, the other thing is I got to visit a lot of countries, and a lot of places I never had been before. And, there's one comical thing, I guess I could mention. It's a little comical to me, it wasn't. I come home, people always ask me, says, do you have a girl in every port? And we finally come up with a stock answer to give them when they asked that. And our answer was, we've never been in every port. So that was sort of a comical thing we came up with, and when they started asking us questions about, did you have a girl in every port?
Well, thank you for coming and sharing your story.
Well, thank you for asking me. I've enjoyed it.
Thank you for your service to our country.
Well, thank you.